Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fulham Chronicles. Hello, Melinda.
Hi, Zara.
How are we doing today?
Good. Well, kind of so windy out there. I look like I've been
It
dragged through it.
is.
It's not good for curly girlies, this weather.
What's happened with summer in the UK?
Yeah. Where's it gone? Where's it
I think
gone?
we haven't had a summer in the UK. Who do we have today in the studio?
So today we have Lucy Johnson.
Hello,
Hello.
Lucy. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. So Lucy, for a little bit of an introduction, is a green coach. She is the founder of Green Salon, the UK's first sustainable lifestyle consultancy.
Ooh.
And she is also a green columnist for Hello magazine and, most importantly, a Fulham resident. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Welcome,
That's right.
welcome, Lucy.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Glad to have you here today.
So let's jump straight in. You have always had a personal, what do we say, long-held passion for the environment, but also you had a professional one because you started off as an environmental journalist.
That's
and then
right.
we cut through to today and, sort of writing a monthly column for Hello and Green Salon. So sort of over to you. I don't want to. You're the expert. You can tell us more about what you do and what Green Salon's all about.
Okay, when I think about this, I talk about the fact that it was a quarter of a century ago that I was,
You wouldn't tell that.
yes, quite a long time ago, that I was first interviewing climate scientists as you say, political and environmental reporter for ITN. And rather terrified by what I heard, to be honest. It's strange that it's 25 years since then, and we're still talking about the same thing, and it's getting more intense. And I feel like I got a sort of early window and glimpse into it all those years ago, and became really alarmed by the direction of travel. And then did quite a lot of stuff in sustainability while I was working at Channel 4 News. And then sort of felt I'd done quite a lot and it was time to move on with my life. I was about to hit 40. I'd forgotten to have children. So I realized that wasn't going to happen while I was still a kind of very, very busy journalist. So I left and I retrained as a psychotherapist.
Wow.
And in the first year of doing that, I met my husband. And I was the lucky woman who managed to have 2 children in my 40s.
Aw.
And absolutely so much joy. So that led me to being a psychotherapist. I've been in private practice for nearly 10 years. And I think it was, essentially, it was an accidental lockdown business baby
Yes.
that I had in 2019 when it occurred to me that I had 2 hats that could be useful right now. I had a sustainability hat and I had a psychology hat. And I thought, how do I put both those hats on? What does that actually look like? So I became a green coach. There aren't very many of them in the world. I mean, there are sustainability coaches who work with businesses, but there aren't very many people who work with individuals, which is I now focus on both. But in the early days, I started working with my friends. It was like,
Of course.
would this be useful? And they were like, well, yeah, really useful, actually. And I found
Well,
one.
also talking about friends, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. You actually do have one of your really good friends who is involved in the business with you, who is a school friend.
That's right. So the funny thing was I
wanted to ask, and I
Yes.
think this is so we have a bit of starting from where you said, so what's coming next? Why did you do? Why was the next step the one that you have approached today? So was it your friend's idea? Was it your idea? So
Okay,
talk us
yeah.
through who came to you saying, "Oh, this is what it works," or is you
Okay.
going to her?
Let me explain all of that. I was doing a coaching with a friend of mine and she said, well, I'm not going to let you near my wardrobe. And I thought, oh, okay, fair enough, actually, because I don't really know very much about fashion and wardrobes. I did actually once upon a time cover the London Fashion Show as a news journalist, but that was a long time ago and it's not my forte. So at that point, I thought, okay, I need a stylist to work with. Somebody can upcycle wardrobes and make them really beautiful. And as luck would have it, my best friend from school is in fact a stylist. She's ex-Chanel. She's spent many years styling London's most fashionable and glamorous women.
Wonderful.
And really interested in sustainability and upcycling and the whole kind of idea of how do we make our clothes work harder, make us more happy to be ourselves.
And also, rather than buying the new,
Exactly.
which is
Yep.
what Rosanna does. Is it Rosanna or
Rosanna.
Rosanna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what Rosanna does
Yeah.
is she'll go, from what I understand, go into a wardrobe, look at pieces, and say, "Well, why aren't you wearing this? Is it
Exactly.
going, or can we
Exactly.
adapt it?" And I think that's such a
I think
brilliant
that's
idea.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, what we did is we swapped. I did some coaching with her. She did some styling with me, and she came into my wardrobe, bit of a mess. And the first thing she did is we spent some hours going through it. And that was a really wonderful experience, actually, because there were so many memories associated with clothes and so many clothes. This is the one what I was wearing when I met my husband. This is what I was wearing when this sort
Yeah.
of thing happened. So we had this lovely experience. And then at the end of it, there were about 14 items that I loved, but I never wore. So we looked at them together, and she said, "Well, that's because this needs just taking in a little bit at the shoulder. You love it, but it's not quite suiting you because it's not quite fitting." So those 14 items went off to Maria, the tailor that we work with, and they came back a few weeks later. I had 14 effectively new items that were old items that I knew I loved, but suddenly really suited me.
What a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great
so much
idea.
cheaper as well than going shopping.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so the other thing that she did is she left my rather messy wardrobe looking sort of like a bijou boutique that I might find in Ibiza, with all my scarves done beautifully and my handbags and everything. So it's like going shopping every time I go into my wardrobe. And the last thing she did that was fantastic was create seasonal collections of my clothes. So she told me, in autumn you put those summer clothes away and you leave them with some lovely smelly things, and then in the spring you open them and you're like, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten I owned that. So again, it's this kind of, because I know as a psychologist that we're quite magpie like. We like the shiny
Yes.
and new, and so there are ways of kind of hacking our neurochemistry to give us those hits
That's
Yes,
what
without
that's
having to
the
go
endorphin
shopping.
hits, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why they say that
Yeah.
if you feel upset, you go shopping.
Yes.
It gives you the same endorphins. And I think
Yeah.
this is what it is when you go in any shop. It's exactly what you just described over there. They all look nice and shiny. They all look like you're in a special boutique. So it attracts you.
Yeah.
So why not being attracted? I absolutely love being an advocate for that. So congratulations. And I think more people should be doing this, because we do have items, guilty as charged,
Everyone's
that
guilty.
we don't seem to fall in love with them again, and that's what you're ultimately doing.
Yeah.
You're making us falling in love with our treasure.
Exactly. And the other thing that I learned is that I have never dressed as well as I now do. Being a bit of an ex-Zara queen, I'm wearing Burberry. Why am I wearing Burberry? Because I buy everything pre-loved, vintage, etc. So the cost of my clothes is they're designer clothes, but they're not at designer prices, and I buy less of them, and I really pick what I love. And I suddenly do feel a bit fashionable,
Yeah, it makes you feel different, doesn't it? I've had this conversation, and I don't know, people are asking, why would you spend so much on a handbag? Right? Like, for example, personally, that's the only thing I would spend money on, a handbag or a pair of shoes. Because they last forever, so you can leave them to generations.
Slow fashion.
Yeah, it is slow fashion, but people don't talk about it, because the other, like the fast growing fashion, is cheaper. It's a, approachable for different matters. You've got a new look at every corner, so to speak, and it's there for you, right? Where you need to go in certain places to find Chanel and whatever not. And also, I think, like, I was watching, it was a movie, I don't remember exactly what I was watching, but it was a Vestiaire Collective.
Yes.
Yes, and are you familiar with it? Do you want to tell Melinda a bit of what that is without saying the name as much? But like,
Okay, so it's part of this trend of designer vintage websites, and this one is monumentally successful.
Emily in Paris. That's what I was watching, the new season.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's on a growth trajectory that's quite extraordinary to witness, because there is this growing recognition that the fast fashion is eating the planet ultimately, and that we can do so much just simply by using the power of our wallets to make different choices and decisions. And extraordinarily, they've worked out that there are 6 generations ahead of clothes already on this planet. We have more clothes than we know what to do with.
Absolutely.
And why are we just creating more at sort of £6 for a t-shirt that that's not the true cost of that t-shirt. There's no
No.
way you're producing, or £3, you're no way you're producing it. There is some poor person that is paying the true cost, and it's not us.
So going back to you being a psychotherapist, that
Mm.
and putting your two hats on,
Yes.
then that really gave you an understanding from that background of how you could change people's habits.
Yes.
So going back to Green Salon and why that was created and set
Okay.
up.
So, as a psychotherapist, I can tell you that what I understand about people is that we don't want things to be taken away from us. It doesn't work very well for human nature to sacrifice and have things taken away. We react badly to that. And that's not because we're bad people. It's how we're evolutionarily created to be like that. So, um, we don't want things taken away, but we do like new ideas. We like new ways of doing things, and we like pleasure and reward. And so I think one of the problems with sustainability, and certainly in the way we live our lives so far, is that we've kind of somehow associated it with sacrifice, uncomfortable, sort of uh, s- itchy woolen fabrics and things that don't feel like something we'd really want to buy or wear or anything.
Mm.
And actually, there are so many brands coming up now that are really beautiful, really thoughtful, really conscious, and actually better than the legacy high street brands that they're
What
replacing.
were you looking in a brand? So for the brand to fit your directory,
Yes.
what would you look? What are the three main focus that you're looking at? If I would come as a brand and I would want to become part of what beautiful thing that you're doing.
Okay. So when we look at brands, we look at what we call the four quadrants: people, planet, animals, and business.
Oh, wonderful.
So we look at a brand and we say, how are you treating people? How are you treating the planet? What are you doing about animals? And are you transparent as a business in what you're doing? And there are a lot of brands out there that are really conscious now of their carbon footprints. They're conscious to not use plastic, because single-use plastic is another enormous growing problem. So they have refillable options. They think in circular ways. So we look for those brands, and then we bring them onto what we call the Green Salon directory. And we have a system whereby we rank them, so that if you want your money to work really hard, you can buy from a dark green brand. But you may not like that. So then you might think, well, that's okay. But this brand I know is doing, it's a lighter green, and
So you're
it's
making it
doing,
affordable for everyone, which is very important.
we're making it accessible. We're making it easy for people
Okay.
to um, try different options, to
When
find greener
your
options.
directory is accessible for everybody. So
Exactly.
they don't need to come to you
No,
as a Green Salon coach
no,
necessarily for
Mm.
their advice. If
no,
they want to, they can go access the directory for free. Go through,
exactly.
you've got home, beauty,
Yep,
fashion, interiors. And
exactly.
That's a lot.
And the exciting news is that we are about to massively upgrade that directory. I can't tell you any more at the moment,
Ooh.
but
You
by
heard it here first.
Christmas,
Yes,
you literally
exactly.
heard it here first. The directory is going to go through an evolution from what I call a colourful caterpillar to an iridescent butterfly.
Wow.
And it is going to hopefully make the mark that I believe that we really do need to do now, which is accelerate this move to greener living, but also, and I think this is really critical, living that is better for us.
Mm.
Most of the brands, in fact, all the brands on there have a very low use of synthetic or no use of synthetic chemicals.
Mm.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that most products and things that you buy for your bathroom and your cleaning products contain things like parabens,
Mhm.
triclosans, siloxanes. We used to know because 25 years ago, I was doing stories on hermaphrodite fish, because those chemicals were,
Gosh.
were accumulating in the
Gosh.
waterways. We now understand, there's a lot of research about this at Harvard University, that it's bioaccumulating in us. Endocrine disruptors are
Mm.
bioaccumulating in our bodies. So what we're doing is bringing into these amazing brands that have spent the research and development on getting rid of these synthetic chemicals and replacing them with much more nature-based forms of chemicals ultimately, but those ones that are not going to bioaccumulate in us in a destructive way. And you may wonder, well, what's so bad about endocrine disruptors? Well, unfortunately, they are now associated with hormonal cancers,
Yeah.
diabetes, inflammatory diseases. So it's actually not something we can any longer avoid.
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, because I remember when everything started and people started offering greener alternatives, and people would be like, oh, and I think I was guilty of that. I'm not using that because it's not going to be as good as, say, I won't mention a big name brand, but it's not going to be good as that washing
Yeah.
powder I use or that liquid. Do you really feel for people who maybe still feel like that actually it's jumped on leaps and bounds and actually the efficiency of those sort of products that are releasing chemicals are a lot better?
Unbelievably better. I mean, I work with
Yeah.
a company called Bauer Collective. Good Housekeeping just called their washing up liquid last year best washing up liquid. These products are not, they've had to prove themselves to be better.
Do you know what's the irony? Back in the day, and even now, actually, if you go back to where I come from, they use soda, they use vinegar, they use three ingredients, and it washes everything so much better than anything and everything. So I think what the problem is of what Melinda's mentioned is more of affording.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That is what it is. It's
the
people
price
might
point.
know it's better, but you're just trying to prioritize. Am I going to eat better food or use better cleaning products? And it's a no-brainer. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important, for somebody like you to explain to people that it's you shouldn't choose. They both go together. You might eat good, and then you are using the wrong chemicals, and it just cancels everything you've been doing.
Yes and no, because none of us are perfect, and that's
Of
okay.
course.
But I think one thing, in fact, my piece for Hello Magazine this week is about how I've stopped buying 10 things and saved myself
How
£2,300 over the last
exciting is
few
about Hello
years.
Wow.
Magazine.
Yes.
Wow.
And how have I done that? By having refillables and reusables.
Mm.
I've bought products that I can reuse. So I've saved myself £2,300. And that money is the money that then goes on upgrading to a washing up liquid that I know doesn't have these synthetic nasties in it. And spending a bit more on, for instance, better meat. We eat as a family less meat, but we eat much better meat.
Yeah.
So it's
Quality.
a lot of people say to me, I can't afford to go green. And I say, actually, it's not about that. It's about reprioritizing our spending.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bit of a mental effort.
Yes.
But once we've got over that kind of hump, we get there and we're like, okay, this is my new habit. It's as easy as my last habit. I just had to create this one.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I completely agree. Owning a like an artisan business or a butcher's or whatever not, I think it's work from their part to make them understand that you might pay a bit extra, but it's a better quality for you, and it makes you feel eat less but better quality. But we live in a world where it's all about it must be every day. You need to have consume protein, but nobody tells you that you can take protein from chickpeas, which is 60, 70, PA. This is the thing, is educating people in anything and everything. So that's what I think what
Absolutely.
you're doing is brilliant.
And this is very much the work that I do. I mean,
Mm.
as a psychotherapist, obviously, I'm also really concerned about the mental health state and mood state in people. And one of the things that we've really learned about recently is the gut microbiome. I'm sure you've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
And we now know that we're not eating nearly enough fiber. We should be eating 30 grams of fiber a day, and most of us are eating half of
Because
that.
everybody makes it all about protein and carbs.
Exactly. And where do you find fiber? You find it in things like grains and pulses and lentils, which are really cheap food. And the other thing about that is that I don't know if many people really know this yet, but we think about serotonin, the happy hormone, as being created in our head. It's not. It's created in our gut. And it's created in our gut by the fermentation process, which is arrived at through fiber. So a lot of what I teach is really about our own personal well-being, because here's the thing: if we're well and taking good care of ourselves and eating well and using nature-based products, we are taking care of the planet. We start with ourselves.
Yeah, well, that's a very nice way of putting things and saying things. Now, the question comes, how many of our lovely residents of Fulham have been using your wonderful services that we should, all do and embrace and, know more of?
Well, not enough.
Okay, well, this is a good opportunity for all of you that are listening and watching us, is to go on that directory and see, how Lucy and her team can help you with. They do wine. I was excited about that. I was looking on the directory and I chose two things: wine and cleaning products. I don't know why. I think it comes with
Well,
age.
cleaning products is an everyday thing, isn't it? And also
Yes.
weddings is I know I've spoken
Yes,
to you about, which is
exactly.
great if
Yeah,
you want to go about that in a more sustainable way.
I think
absolutely.
everybody should do their wedding with somebody like you, because there's so much waste at the end of it that people don't even, think of. And it's,
I recently did a wedding coaching session, actually, which was
wow.
so much fun because I kind of relived having a wedding myself. I
Mm,
was helping with the planning and seasonality and what could we use. And she had this wonderful
that's
idea
great.
of putting fruit on the table rather than
Mm.
flowers. So she did these big, big mounds. She's doing these big mounds of fruit. And then everybody takes them away as a kind
Oh,
of
at the end
present
of
at
the
the
at the
end. But
end,
she's
so
doing it
nice.
really beautifully and
Mm.
thoughtfully.
Mm.
And I was just, oh my goodness, I think I should be a wedding planner.
It makes you excited, doesn't it? It's great. You wouldn't have thought about this.
Yeah.
I think everybody, every business out there should embrace this, especially, people are doing events, or because there is so much that we can learn of.
So, what's your best advice to people if they want to make that switch to greener living?
Well, I have two things to say about that. The first is there's some really low hanging fruit that you can do.
Mm.
The first is changing to a renewable energy provider, and that gets rid of all of your carbon footprint for your electricity. And
Yay.
if you go with
Mm.
somebody like Good Energy, 10% is biogas, so you begin to get rid of that. So there are some really low hanging fruit. But I think the other thing that I talk to people about is mindset, that actually this is a journey of changing the way that we think and the way we behave. And we can't do that by shaming and blaming ourselves. We're all so hard on ourselves. We're
Mm.
always beating ourselves up. And actually, that doesn't then motivate us to make changes in habits and behavior. What motivates us is celebration. It's finding a way to hack on neurology to get those dopamine hits,
Mm.
whether that's making your wardrobe look like a boutique, or
Mm.
whether it's just saying to yourself when you've achieved something like, I don't know, signing up to a refillable subscription service, just spending the time to say, hey, I bossed that.
Mm.
Yeah.
What that does is it uses the dopamine reward system in our mind to essentially give us a hit. And what we find, or what I know as a psychotherapist, is that big brands are doing that to us all the time.
Mm.
They are using that reward system. And actually, rather than give it
Mm.
to them, we can do it for ourselves. And that then makes us less victims of the sort of consumerist culture that's around us and gives us more agency and control and
Mm.
power.
Power, that's what
Power,
I was about
yeah.
to say.
Yeah. And self confidence.
Yeah.
So at the end of a coaching with me, it isn't just about green living and, finding ways that we can ease synthetic chemicals and plastics out of our house. It's about a journey into finding yourself and what you love, living by your values, no longer being in that space of kind of cognitive dissonance
Am
where
I
you
right to say back to basics?
back to basics, but
Mm.
back to basics with joy.
Yeah. Oh,
I
Yeah.
that's
love
oh,
that.
we should call the episode like that. Back to basics with joy. Lovely.
And the other thing I would love to say is that when as a psychotherapist, when I work with people, if they come to me with sort of what we might think of as dysfunctional habits,
Mm.
that's why they've come to see me. Something's not working in their lives.
Mm.
I can't take those away from them, because where would we be without the things that kind of prop us up in the way that we live our lives? I help them to find ways to replace those habits with new, healthy, more joyful habits. And
It's
what I
wonderful.
find in psychotherapy is then clients aren't really giving anything up. They're just transitioning over to these new ways of thinking and being. And they let go of the other dysfunctional habits. So I think of what the work that I'm doing on a sort of social level is finding healthy replacements for unhealthy previous ways of
Mm.
doing things that we joyfully embrace. We go over there because we love it. And before we know it, we forget about the old ways of doing things that were not that very, very good for us or the planet.
You formed some new habits.
We
Exactly,
form some
better
new
ones.
healthy habits
Well,
and
I
happy
think,
ones.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, Green Salon does quite a lot. It's you. This is a pure example where you cannot read everything through a directory, or as nice as the website is done, or whatever not. I think it's so important for places like this where you give people a voice. So voices need to be like heard loud and clear. And I think you've done a brilliant job today by explaining to us how it's all within.
It's all
You can,
within.
yeah, it
Mm.
is all within. And I think that's where beauty comes from. And
Yeah.
more people like you to remind us that every day.
Yeah. Well, I'm trained to do it, but also it's something that I've been on this journey myself,
Yes.
Oh,
you know, and it's a journey that has given me so much happiness in my own life. And to be able to share that with other people feels
mm.
like a real blessing, honestly.
Where did you feel that you had a client where you felt the most
Is that a
happy?
question?
Yeah, where you felt sort of, it's not an on the spot question, but it is a question, where you felt the most happiest in terms of the new habits that were created or the steps on them. Maybe they came to you like super confused. I don't know where to start
Oh,
here.
that's a good one.
Um,
Yeah. I had a client who basically, as you say, eco-confused and also kind of, I think, without wishing to sound too therapeutic or kind of say too much detail, also I think at a place in their own life where things were feeling muddled
mm,
inside them, and it wasn't therapy that I did; it was green coaching. But through the medium of the green coaching, we together managed to find a place where she felt so much more settled and happy within
Mm.
herself, and so much more aligned with herself that she left feeling really, well, she fed back to me that she left feeling really positive about not just being the green stuff in her life, but actually how it made her feel about herself and what she wanted to do with her life.
That's brilliant how every single road takes back to us.
mm,
It all starts with us.
Yeah,
And, no matter what, everything that you want to change in life, bits by bits, find a happiness in the little things. And I think this is a little thing that makes a huge difference.
yeah.
And again, it's educating and letting people know.
we introduced you as being a Fulham resident up
Yo.
front, always really important for our audience. How long have you been in Fulham? And why did you come to Fulham?
Okay, there's a bit of a story here.
Oh,
Oh,
great. Love a
So
story.
when I got together with my husband, we got together and I got pregnant very quickly. We weren't actually living together. I was in Shepherd's Bush and he was in Pimlico, and we thought, oh gosh, we need a house.
in
So
between, meet me
some,
halfway.
but I didn't want to move to Pimlico and he didn't want to move to Shepherd's Bush. So we spent quite a few months kind of thinking about, would you move here? Would you move there? And eventually he came up with a brilliant solution. And this is not meant as an insult to Fulham, but he said, let's move somewhere neither of us wants to live.
Oh.
But
What
what, but
hopefully a good surprise.
so exactly. So what we did is
Oh.
we looked for the house. Rather than looking for the area, we thought, let's find a beautiful house. So we found a really beautiful house. We're very lucky to live in Parsons Green. And we fell in love with the house. And since then, we've fallen in love with Parsons Green.
Aw.
So we've been here 15 years now. Yeah. And have really been so blessed with the amazing parks, the lovely people, um, gorgeous schools like Lady Margaret. So we're very happy here.
We've got an amazing neighborhood. We keep saying that, we keep praising it, but it's yeah. I think everybody that was on the pod so far, they all come with a story. And the funny thing is that life, brought them to Fulham. None of them, literally, I'm thinking about none of them are actually living in Fulham because they've been born here.
Or
People
there
that we
was
had
or
so
there was a
far.
boomerang
Yeah,
effect,
it
like
was
they've left
always
and wanted to
life.
come back.
So if you believe in energy, we all know what that means. You are being attracted where you're meant to be and where
Exactly.
good things
Yeah.
are. Right, we've got the question.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with on the spot question.
Mhm.
Well, we all know about the wonderful things that you're doing now with the Green Salon. If you wouldn't have been a journalist or what you're doing today, have you got other passions? What would you have been? So if you were to be on a second chance to life.
Okay, so I did train really to be an actress,
Ooh.
but I quickly decided that that was quite a tough lifestyle, really, and not very well paid,
Yeah.
Yeah.
unless you happen to be a megastar,
Yeah.
which is fairly unlikely.
And many takes of the
Exactly,
same scene.
exactly. So it's an interesting one because I honestly can't think of anything I'd rather be doing with my life.
Oh, that's
I
fair.
love what I do. I weirdly feel like I was kind of born to be doing this. So I'm afraid this is it, and I
Well,
love
I
it.
am very satisfied with the answer.
But it's
But
also
you
had
can
it's
tell.
had a it's taken you on a lovely path, hasn't it? From
Yes.
your beginnings as an environmental journalist, kind of all the way through to and to meet your school best friend and to work with her. It's a lovely kind of flow.
And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, if I look back, I didn't plan any of this.
Everything
You know,
happens for a reason, Lucy.
exactly. It really just unfolded. You know, why was I going to be a psychotherapist after I'd been a journalist? You know, why was, and then suddenly when I got to starting Green Salon, I look back and I went, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is why I've
exactly.
done all these things, is to bring me here.
Yes, to get you to that place,
Exactly.
and all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle
Exactly.
fell into place,
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking my question is maybe to look at the next generation who we talk about. There's a lot of climate change anxiety amongst younger people. It's become a real big mental health issue actually with them. And the stats really bear that out. I just wondered, as a mother, as a parent, what would your advice be to a younger generation in terms of what they can do? And also, there's one column in a paper, I forget which one it is, that I read, which often talks about there's so much bad news, and there's so much bad news about climate change, but also it's sort of a bit of a double-handed question, actually. There are positives, surely there must be positives. There are positive changes. Yes, the overall picture is still, as you say, you're 25 years down the line, but there must be some positive things that we can cling on to. Bit of hope.
It's really interesting you asked me that, Melinda, because one of the reasons I set up Green Salon is because I was seeing so much more eco-anxiety in my psychotherapy work. And what occurred to me is that one of the best ways to deal with anxiety is to take action. And really, that's what Green Salon is. It's taking action in the face of anxiety and actually finding within that the opportunities for growth. So it's a really good question about what do we do about the mental health aspects? What do we tell our children? We get them involved. We get them involved in our own journey of finding greener ways of doing things. They love it.
Yeah.
They want to find new ways of doing things.
100%.
They want solutions, and those solutions are just really arriving now. The other thing is, yes, there's an awful lot of bad news. The situation isn't under control yet, and there is still a lot of risk. But there is the most enormous amount of opportunity at the moment. We have a unbelievable opportunity to create almost, I mean, new society sounds ridiculously utopian, but a society that's so much more in balance with nature. We had an industrial revolution which unleashed so much that was amazing,
Yes.
and yet had its dark side. We are now on the cusp of a green revolution, which will bring to us renewable energy. It will bring an awareness of nature, working with the wisdom and the genius of nature. And the brands that I work with are tapping in so fundamentally to the circularity, the low waste, the regenerative nature of nature, that is becoming a massive movement. So we could be standing on the cusp of a world that we never even imagined. And if we all step into it over time, and this can be difficult, and that's why people like me are here, if we go on that journey, it makes it so much more likely. We talk about tipping points, and 50% of people need to do things. Actually, the latest research says 1 in 4. 25% of people. If 25% of people say to themselves, you know what, I'm actually going to really think about, what could I do to reduce my impact on the planet? What swaps can I make in my life? 1 in 4, we can start the tipping point, and we can go over into a society that is so much better in balance with nature.
It's always the hard way, isn't it? That we need to go through the worst to realize that how our ancestors actually lived was the healthy way. But yeah, that was a very good question.
And that, I think, is an amazing, hopeful point to finish on. So thank you so much, Lucy, for coming in today. I'm sure we've both really enjoyed the
Yeah,
conversation.
it was really educational. I
yeah,
absolutely loved it.
definitely
Thank
Thank
you
you
learned
for
a
coming
lot.
so
today.
much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh gosh, lovely to have you here. And before we wrap up, must say a huge thank you to Archie Pango, our sponsor. We really value their support. And also a huge thanks, as ever, to the wonderful team and the gorgeous studio here at VoxPod Studio.
Always a pleasure to be in.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for coming,